research institute called SINTEF, based in Norway. Welcome, Marita.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and we have been collaborating in different projects the last couple of years, and I know that you have a lot of insights and experience in this field of chatbots and in education, and the kind of the human chatbot relationships that are starting to evolve. I would like to, in just a couple of minutes, give you the floor, and but I might pop you a couple of questions to start with to warm up. And to all of you newcomers here today, Edubots, you might have read up on the website and the information about the webinar, but Edubots, just as a refresher, is a European-wide project co-funded by the European Commission in the Erasmus Plus Knowledge Alliance program. And we have the pleasure of exploring the future of chatbots in higher education. I think it's fair to say that this technology has been rapidly evolving over the last couple of years or decades. And the abilities of chatbots to engage in conversations with humans are much stronger today than it has been just 5 years ago. We are approaching this exploration in a collaborative manner, where the basis for exploration is relationships and a community of practice. And it's a community of practice including researchers, educators, and also industry expertise. For that purpose, we are now encouraging everyone to join the Edubots community, and we're hosting that on this platform called Differ, where we have set up a community to establish relationships and conversations on this topic. So I will take the chance to share a link with you now, where I would be very pleased if you join that community. Some of you might already be a member of the community. If so, feel free to go straight to this topic that we call Say Hi. So we hope that that you will take the chance to connect with your peers across Europe. Let me see where the chat is. So in the chat right now, there's a link. If you follow that, you can register for this community called Edubots Community. Okay, so that was point number one, the community. That's the foundation for everything. And the second point is that we are preparing some learning resources that we make available free of charge to all educators across Europe. So this is a chance for everyone to learn the basics about chatbots, and that is something that we hope that you will make use of, and also that you take the chance of sharing this with your colleagues, or potentially if you see the opportunity of sharing this learning resources and invite people to join the community on a university level. Perhaps you can set up a group of educators and establish a small network where you co-explore the topic locally. Third, but not least, we are also providing 2 chatbot solutions free of charge as part of the project to all participating educators. So that are giving you those tools with that you can use with up to 200 students. So that's a chance to get some practical experience also with chatbots, not just reading about it theoretically. So we hope to bridge over from curiosity to basic knowledge to practical experience. So with that, without further ado, I would like to give you Marita, or welcome Marita again. And I have a first question that popped up ahead of the webinar here. And since you've chosen to start researching chatbots in education, I'm just curious when you got bitten by the chatbot bug, and what is it that makes you so curious about chatbots and the human relationship with chatbots? So you decided to spend a number of years of your career on this topic.
Do you hear me okay now, by the way? I took off my headphones because it's very warm in here.
Okay, yeah.
It's fine? Yeah, good. Well, I started researching chatbots almost 4 years ago, and it was just coincident, I think, that we had the project when I was hired and I was put on it as a researcher. And I think the reason why I've continued and why I'm so into human chatbot relationships is because I know that they can make people feel good, and I also feel good when I talk to chatbots, and that's a very interesting aspect. So that's the answers to those questions, I think.
That's cool. So you personally feel good when chatting with chatbots?
Yes, it's very strange, but if a chatbot give me a compliment or ask me about my day or something like that, it do trigger the same feeling as a human doing it, which I find to be very interesting, and it just sort of shows the power of good chatbots in a way, like what they can actually do when they've done correctly.
So you distinguish between the good and the bad?
Yes, because I think that maybe the majority of today's chatbots cause probably more frustration than that sensation that I'm describing as of now, especially like the customer service chatbots. But we have examples of very, very good chatbots that can actually induce a lot of positive emotions in people, and make people feel seen, maybe less lonely, and so on. So it shows that the technology is there if it's sort of done correctly, so to speak.
That's fantastic. So before you jump into the main topic of today, which is about the chatbots and the student journey, would you mind sharing a little bit what type of projects you're working with right now?
Yes, so I'm currently involved in a chatbot project that is called Chatbots for Loyalty, where we look at chatbots in educational setting, where we specifically look at how chatbots can sort of follow students for a longer period of time. So that would be like the main topic of today's talk, but that's actually a very small part of my normal research, because my PhD, which I'm currently doing or working on, focuses more on relationship with chatbots and humans, and that's specifically relationships in the sense of friendship or romantic relationships. So that sort of goes a bit beyond the educational context, and now I'm currently doing a study where I try to merge those two. So that's my areas of research as of now.
That's fascinating. So you're saying that humans are developing not just friendly relationships, but even romantic relationships with chatbots.
Yes, it's the type of chatbots that is normally referred to as social chatbots. So they are developed with the purpose of becoming someone's companion. And for some people, they can develop very close relationships. Some even marry their chatbots. Of course, it's not a legal marriage because that's we are not come that far in society just yet. But at least for them and in their life, they can consider themselves as married to their chatbots in some of the closer relationship that I look into.
That's amazing. So before we start, let's just open up the floor here, or the airwaves, or whatever you say. If there's any questions from the participants, the community here, that's the real ambition here, is really to make these community events. I'm inspired by town hall gatherings where anyone just can pick up the microphone and speak and ask a question and have these open dialogues. So even though some of you are strangers to each other, if you dare, please take the chance to ask questions here. I see Aftab has raised a hand here. Welcome, Aftab. Would you like to just briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Aftab Hussain. I'm the Learning Technology Manager at Bolton College. We've had a campus digital assistant now since April 2017 called Ada. I just wanted to ask a question to Marita about empathy and contextualization. As the amount of context grows, you build more empathy between yourself and the digital assistant. I'm just wondering if the amount of context grows and grows and grows and evolves over the next few years, what will that do towards our empathic relationship with these digital assistants? And what does it mean between ourselves and these digital companions that we'll potentially have for the rest of our lives? Because one of the things I say is that every student, every teacher will have a lifelong companion that will support their teaching and learning and training. And so we'll have a high degree of empathy towards these services. I'm just wondering, in your research, what have you discovered so far about that?
Well, people have a lot of empathy towards the chatbots already, at least those that grow fond of their chatbots. They do sort of treat them equal to how they would treat humans in their lives. At least that's what they say themselves, and that's important for them. And I do think that that's something we will see more of, where it will sort of become more natural and maybe just like an extension of what we already have between humans today.
So perhaps you will touch on that during the presentation and also in the discussion and Q&A afterwards. There's something popping up here. Was there someone else having a question here? I see was JP. Welcome.
Thank you. You can hear me?
Nice to meet you in person.
Yeah, same here. Maybe it comes out in the presentation, but I'm really
sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind introduce yourself?
Certainly. JP Bosman, Stellenbosch University, South Africa. I'm at the Center for Learning Technologies.
Great, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just, just broadly speaking, is there a difference between different bots? Because the kind of things that Marita has now shared in the conversation, around companionship and all those things, is there a difference like between different kinds of chatbots and what we like, the only little experience with Edubots now that through Differ, which seems to do something else, which seems to point to other relationships and to try and create relationships between people and not with the bot itself. So I mean, is that a very important distinction? And maybe it will come out and maybe it's not applicable, but that is a very important question to me, in terms of what we are actually talking about the different levels and aspects or whatever. Thank you.
Yes, I do think that the type of relationship people can have with chatbots and also humans depends greatly on the different chatbots and how they are designed and what type of feelings they induce and so forth, because obviously I would find it difficult to believe that someone would get romantic feelings for customer service chatbots, for instance, but that doesn't mean that they can't have like a customer relationship with the chatbot in the same sense that they might have with their person working in the bank, which I think also would sort of be the case in education settings. So I do believe that different chatbots will sort of set the groundworks for different types of relationship to evolve, and then it's a bit up to the designers and the people working on that to see what is most suitable for different types of context, so to speak.
Okay, great. So this is perfect. We'll start with a bit of Q&A and warm up, and I think now would be a good time for a presentation. You prepared something for us, Marita, and then we'll save a little bit of time for the end for Q&A as well. So please take note of question answers. Please let us know, Marita, what you prefer, questions along the way or in the end.
In the end, I think is fine unless there's something that is very unclear.
Okay.
Yes.
Take it away.
Do you guys see my screen now?
Yes, we do.
Do you see the presentation version or the full screen?
Presentation, I think.
Can you see like the
Presentation in full screen?
In full screen. Okay, good. Okay, so I will share some of the work that we have done so far on chatbots in an education setting, and to sort of set the stage as to why it's important to do this type of research and to focus on chatbots in this context. I'm going to share a personal experience with you guys. So this is a very old picture of me. I was 20 when this picture was taken, and it was taken the summer before I started studying psychology at university. And as you guys can see in the picture, I look very happy, and I was super excited for starting at university. I was very optimistic about my academical future, and I was also, of course, very proud for being able to be accepted at the university. And I remember very well the first day of the semester when I went to the bookstore to buy my curriculum, and the wheels just came off the bus immediately the moment I saw the amount of books that I would have to read and to memorize. And I remember being completely shocked because high school had not prepared me for that at all. And I felt very, very insecure and didn't really know what to do. And I was also left more or less to myself because I studied remotely. So I was basically an online student and I didn't have any friends that went to the university. My family didn't really have experience with the university, so it was just me. And of course, I didn't dare to reach out to the professors and ask questions. And I had no idea where to begin, and it was a terrible first semester for me. I don't think I've ever felt so stupid and lost in my entire life. And I actually ended up not showing up for my first exam, and I almost failed my second one. So it was not a great start, to say the least. And I know that I'm not alone when it comes to having these type of experiences. So I've read somewhere that it's estimated that between 40 and 80% of online students drop out of their studies every year. Of course, there are a lot of reasons as to why, but I do sympathize and I have no problems understanding why the number can be so high. Being a student can be very difficult, and especially when you're an online student. The lack of physical space can make it harder to get in touch with others, which in turn can, of course, influence the ability to understand and learn the curriculum and the motivation to sort of stay put and finish the studies. And I know that these problems are relatively acknowledged, and there are a lot of tools that exist with the aim of helping students and support students in their online schooling. We have a lot of different learning platforms. We have group chats, we have Facebook groups, and so on. And what has sort of started to pop up as new ways of helping students is chatbots. And I think just in the last 6 months, there have been so much research published on various types of prototypes and concepts when it comes to chatbots in an education setting. Examples include, for instance, TaskBot, which is a chatbot that was developed to help online teams or groups plan, track, and execute tasks. And then you have another one, which is called GroupFeedBot, which I really like, which is developed to facilitate group discussions, which we know is something that we need. And while I find it very exciting that research is sort of starting to acknowledge chatbots as a useful tool to support online students, I find that a lot of the ideas and sort of like the approach is a bit isolated. So by that, I mean that they're sort of like the chatbots are usually not developed to support the students through their studies, but more to help with a simple problem here and there. So by doing this, we might sort of end up throwing a lot of cool chatbots at the students, but we sort of neglect how they fit within the bigger picture. So the way I see it, it's a little bit like dumping pieces to the puzzle on the table and then just stop there without making the pieces fit, and then just anticipate that the students will be able to do so themselves. So what we have tried to do in the project that I'm working on is to sort of see if we can make the pieces fit by looking at how we can use chatbots to support students through their whole student journey. And by student journey, I mean from the moment they start thinking about becoming a student and actually doing research and trying to figure out what type of study program to choose, to actually handing in their exam at the end of the semester. And I think one thing that is so unique about the student journey is that it's extremely predictable. We know when a semester will start. We know when the students have important deadlines, like when they need to hand in essays, or when they need to participate in their exams. And we also have access to a lot of teachers and counselors that have years of experience answering student questions, and that also know that at certain points in the student journey, there will be questions related to a specific topic. And since we know all this, it should be relatively easy to make something that can be more proactive and sort of offer help to the student before they get overwhelmed and lose their motivation altogether. In a very simplistic way, it's a very simplistic way of looking at it maybe, but we just need to map out important events and get an overview of how the student journey look, and then think about how we can sort of fit chatbots within this journey. And that's what we have been trying to do. So in order to sort of answer the question, how can chatbots support online students through their student journey, I have conducted several interviews. And I've interviewed both online students, and I have interviewed experienced student counselors working at the school that provides online education. And my goal with these interviews was to uncover important phases in the student journey, so how the student journey look, basically, in addition to the challenges that online students typically have in the various phases. And based on this, me and the counselors made a roadmap and chatbot concepts that illustrates how chatbots can be used to support online students through their student journey. So the first thing I looked at was therefore the phases online students go through and what challenges they typically have. So I identified roughly 7 phases that the students go through from the moment they contact the school to get information about the study program they are looking into to actually handing in their exam at the end of the semester. And I've also pinpointed specific and very important goals related to this, such as actually choosing the right study program and signing up, to actually showing up for the first school day, handing in relevant essays, and also, of course, handing in the final exam. And it might not come as a surprise that every phase comes with its own challenges. The students can, for instance, find it very difficult to ask for help. This can be an issue in the early phase when they need help choosing the right study program, but also in the later stages when they struggle to understand the curriculum. Some of the students that I talked to, they said that they find that the online environment, so to speak, makes it more difficult to ask for help because you feel like you are a burden to a larger extent. When you are in a physical lecture, you can just walk up to the professor afterwards and ask a simple question, but when you are an online student, you have to send an email, and you know that that email will most likely disturb the person in its current job, and you feel bad about doing so. Some also pointed out that it can be difficult to find or understand the information that is available, and that they can struggle a lot with study techniques, as well as sort of having a hard time staying motivated over time, and also to manage the stress that can be induced by exam periods and so on. And then you also have the feeling of loneliness, of course, which was mentioned by some, either because it is difficult to meet other people when you're an online student, or because you can feel a bit neglected from the school and the teachers. Some would say that they felt like after they had sort of paid for their program, they never heard anything from the school. There was no one that sent them a message to ask how they were doing. They were just left to themselves and basically just to show up on the exam day, and that was it. So we know that the students have a lot of challenges, which brings us to the next question, which is maybe a bit more interesting one, which is how can a chatbot help? So how can we sort of use chatbots to mitigate some of the challenges that online students are facing? And as you saw, the students seems to have a varied set of challenges, and this might mean that it's necessary to have different chatbots taking on different roles, or one chatbot that can help with at least 3 distinct areas. So the first type of chatbot that might be necessary is the form of student assistant chatbot. And the goal of this chatbot would be to make it easier to identify relevant information, create a stronger sense of being seen by the school, as well as reminding the students about upcoming events and deadlines, and follow up after important deadlines, especially if they didn't hand in anything, or just initiate contact and say hello from time to time to make sure that the students are doing well, that they're coping well with school life and everything in between. And then it seems like students might benefit from having like a more of an educator bot, one that can sort of focus more on strengthening their motivation, and also help them understand the curriculum, and basically understand how to be a student, how to read the books, and how to actually prepare for exams. And lastly, we have a more socially oriented chatbot that can try to contribute and sort of facilitate more active group discussions inside learning platforms, so that the students can actually leverage each other's knowledge, and then also try to connect students with each other and help students get a broader social network, so to speak. Okay, so we know roughly how the student journey may look like. We know what challenges they might have. And we have an idea of how the chatbots can sort of be used to mitigate those challenges. So this brings me to my next question. So how does this actually look like? When should a chatbot try to initiate contact? And me and the counselors that I interviewed have made a roadmap illustrating this. And this is, of course, a very simple way of looking at it, but I think it shows a different way of thinking about chatbots that can be used to support students, especially online students, which I think is beneficial. So here you see a slight modification of the phases I presented earlier. And what I have done is simply to just map on the chatbots. I've just taken the chatbots and put them in the student journey where they sort of seem to belong. So I will try to explain this a little bit better. So let's take an imaginary person, someone that is not yet a student, but is thinking about becoming one. So when this person first contacts an online school to get some information about a different study program, they will have the opportunity to talk to the assistant chatbot, which will then try to help them decide what program to choose, how to sign up, and so on. So this chatbot will try very early on to maybe start a process of building some type of relationship and indicate that this will be like their dedicated chatbot if they become a student at the school and follow them through their student journey. So this means that when the same person is accepted to the study program, the same chatbot will congratulate them on getting accepted, in addition to making sure that they have gotten the relevant information needed or help them out if they have any other questions at this point in time. So when the first day of school is here, the same chatbot will then welcome the student and remind the student about important deadlines and things to think about. And this chatbot will then sort of try to leverage the fact that the students have got more familiar with it, maybe started to see it as like their chatbot, which might have making the students trust the chatbot a little bit more, and try to sort of leverage that by introducing other types of chatbots, hopefully making the student more willing to listen to the other chatbots in the student journey, such as the social bots, which will then suggest that it can introduce the student to other students. And then early in the student journey, the educational chatbot will also initiate contact to make sure that the students sort of know how to tackle the curriculum and prepare for what's to come. And this chatbot will also continue to stay in touch with the students through the semester and motivate them or help them learn. The social bot might arrange weekly discussions between students and the teacher, while the assistant bot will initiate contact from time to time to make sure that the students are doing good and coping well with the stress or other emotional issues, and just check in to see if the students need any type of support. And before important deadlines, the educator bot will make sure that the students know how to write the essay and prepare, while the assistant bot will follow up afterwards, especially in cases where the students didn't hand in what they were supposed to. Then the assistant bot will try to understand why, offer some support, maybe put the student in contact with the teacher and try to help them before they sort of fall out of the study program altogether. So this is, of course, a very simple way of looking at it. In a real life scenario, this would be a lot more complicated, not only from a technical perspective, but also because it would have to require a lot of tailoring to make sure that the different students' preferences are taken care of. Some might not want this type of active interaction with the chatbot and so on. So it's a lot of things that needs to sort of be looked into and to be investigated further. But the idea is to demonstrate a different way of thinking about chatbots in an education setting, where the chatbot sort of becomes something more than just a Q&A station, and where you have like this long-term relationship in mind, and you look at the chatbot as something that is actually going to be present and active in the student's life, so to speak, for a longer period. And ideally, the chatbot would be able to build some type of relationship with the students that can sort of compensate for instances where the school have a hard time keeping up with every single student. And the notion of building a relationship with the student is something that I'm working on right now. I'm currently recruiting students to get feedback on a prototype that try to do what I've just described, follow the student for a longer period of time, but also have a greater emphasis on different strategies to sort of build a type of relationship. And here I want to understand how this is perceived, like what do students actually think about this type of chatbot, and what type of relationship is it that they want to have or do not want to have, and how can we maybe make that happen? And also, of course, the potential implications of such relationship. And I know that a lot of people can find it very strange when I talk about relationships between humans and chatbots, but it's actually a very natural human tendency that we can sort of be inclined to form those relationships. Humans have this very unique ability to want to act socially towards everything that has some type of human characteristics, and chatbots have potentially a lot of them, considering the fact that they actually communicate in natural language in the same way that we do. So it's actually quite natural that we want to form a relationship. And I've seen from my PhD work that these type of relationships can have a lot of benefits, both for the user, but obviously for the chatbots, because it's reasonable to assume that if you have a relationship with the chatbot, or if you feel like this chatbot is my chatbot, that you will be more forgiving maybe if the chatbot makes a mistake, and that it will sort of influence the attachment and the willingness maybe to interact with the chatbot. So in that regards, I think the chatbots can benefit a lot from having these relationships also. But I'm going to focus more on this topic on the conference. Then I'm going to present the results from the study where I've looked at students and the relationship between students and chatbots. So if this sounds interesting, then you need to be there as well. So this is what I had for today. If you guys have any questions or anything you want to discuss, then feel free to ask.
Thank you, Marita. That's great. I think in a normal context, we would give you a big round of applause. So that's a virtual applause for you there. It's really interesting to hear about this conceptual work. And we already have a question here, and it's from Aftab. Would you mind voicing that question? You wrote in the chat as well. But
Yeah,
if you would like to elaborate.
I just wanted to ask Marita about if you've got different specialist chatbots that perform discrete and narrow functions, how do they all cooperate with one another? And especially if they're managing very large amounts of data, is there a danger that the student could get inundated with notifications and reminders? And is there a master bot that manages these smaller specialist chatbots?
Yes, that's actually something that I'm not sure of what is the best approach there. If you should have like different chatbots like I sort of described here, or if it should just be one chatbot that incorporates all of the different roles. And when it comes to like the technical aspects of how to manage the different streams of students and so on, I can't really answer to that. That's not my area of expertise, but maybe there's some other here with technical knowledge that knows how that.
Yeah, we had one input from Gregor. Would this be something you would like to elaborate on?
Sure. So I think there are generally different approaches, and it really matters the different use cases. But as I wrote, I think a masterbot, I think, is something that is not really needed. Usually you would have sort of a shared database or some other kind of knowledge system that stores usually user-centered knowledge, right? I mean, you would have the bot knowledge, that sort of the knowledge covers a certain use case, and then you perhaps would not have knowledge that is based on a user, like the username or other stuff that the user has done before in order to decide what to do here. And if that's probably the most common scenario, you would have the shared knowledge that all the bots can use. And another more modern way would be having an alternative that the bots can communicate with each other. So like you communicate to one bot, the bot realizes it's the wrong guy, so to speak, and tries to forward the conversation to another bot in order to take over.
So trying to translate this, it basically means that students would not, in this scenario, students would not have one relationship with one chatbot, but rather have 3 relationships with 3 different chatbots, right?
Technically, yes. I think from a pure corporate identity point of view, it could be one chatbot presented towards the customer, and still multiple chatbots on the back end that are from a technical point of view. So I think it depends a bit on how you design the system and the experience around it.
Let's bring the question back to Marita. Is there a trade-off between having these bot user cases as part of one bot versus having 3 different bots doing their separate things?
Yes, that's something I'm interested to find out, and I don't really know, because I've seen from the research that I've been doing on social chatbots and like friendship development that it's seen as a huge benefit that the chatbot is capable of participating in a lot of variety of activities, that there's a lot of different things you can sort of do with your chatbot. And it might be the same case here, where if you have one that is capable of doing everything, maybe that will strengthen the relationship, because there's a lot of different activities you can participate and have sort of shared experiences together that will have like a relationship strengthening effect. Or maybe it will be messy and not have the same functionality, so to speak, in this context. I really don't know, but I think that's something that it's important to look into, because of course if you have 3 different roles and then 3 different chatbots, and then you don't like one, or you have an argument with one, you still might want to continue the relationship with the 2 others, because they are seen as 2 distinct or 3 distinct entities. Whereas if it's only one, if you have an argument or you're not pleased, then maybe, then that's it. So maybe that's like an upside, or if you don't like the first one, it might just make you not want to interact with the 2 others. Who knows? But I think it's
so this is touching on a monogamy or polygamy.
Yes, but it's something that is worth researching, I think.
Yeah, excellent. Aftab, would you like final word on that, on the topic? Goran has also raised his hand here. If you would like to join the let's give the word to Goran first. I forgot. Goran?
Okay, cheers. Yeah, I have a question. Can you please elaborate a bit more on the motivational role of the chatbot in the educational process? I think that we can all see the Q&A aspects, the enrollment support, sharing of basic information, dissemination, etc. But this motivational aspect, which I think it's really important for the education for the student, but on the other hand, a true human element. So I see a big challenge here for the chatbot. So if you can provide us with any additional insights.
Yes, I think the motivation part is difficult, and again, it's something that we need to sort of test out and see what works. But I do think that chatbots have, because they sort of have like this relational aspect to them. I do think that they might, like pep talk from a chatbot might have the same effect as a pep talk from a teacher or a counselor. If you are struggling and the chatbot is displaying empathy, maybe it will have the same effect, so to speak. So I think just from making the chatbot engaging and trying to sort of be motivating in the way it talks, maybe that can be enough in some ways to push the students forward and making them sort of feel that there's someone that is cheering them on, more so than to have specific functionalities. Because you can of course have games, you can maybe implement like the Pomodoro technique in the chatbot, where the chatbot can track like how long you are having a study session every day, and then give you like a thumbs up or a score every week for how well you were doing. Like you can probably implement some gamification and these type of things too. So I think it's different ways of looking at it. It's for sure one of the more difficult aspects, but what we want to look into is like the pep talk aspect, and if that's actually helpful or just seems stupid from the students' perspective.
I can just share that I've seen some initial work on a project in the Netherlands about improving student self-regulation and helping students become more kind of autonomous students, setting goals and following goals. So that is, there's some initial interesting work in that area. Where it's that kind of self-reflection, which is one important task that chatbots might be able to help students do.
Yes, and that's something we see from research on social chatbots, that they are very good at facilitating self-reflection in their users and make users become more aware of their strengths and weaknesses. And for some reason, by them becoming aware of it, it seems like they are also more motivated to maybe try to change, or that they feel that the change is possible. So I also think that that's one way where, or one aspect where chatbots have a potential to do something.
Thank you. I'm just bringing in some comments and questions here from the chat. Thomas adding here, there's also some complication around user preferences and experience. May want individual elements. I'm not interested in the social chatbot, but also combined ones. I don't want to get more than X notifications combined. Miles is bringing in a question here. Miles is, by the way, our next guest speaker in our webinar next week. So perhaps we could bring Miles in if you would like to turn on your video and audio.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to move my screen quickly because I've split over across everything. I don't want to be looking and talking in different directions. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I just think in regards to you're talking about like nudging and learning analytics there, and the chatbot just being facilitated for that. And there's varied conversations around retention. And so is the chatbot just a facilitator for that? And also about the, statements of empathy and things like that from a chatbot might be misinterpreted by certain people, or they might not like it, so it might put them off. So is there potential of, this bot being used at an institution actually causing damage to, some people?
Yes, I think that's a very interesting point and an important concern, because how people perceive like the tone of voice and all of that will be very, very different. So for some, the chatbot might be perceived as cute and friendly, while others will find it to be extremely inappropriate and find it to be uncomfortable. And that's something that we see from other types of research, that it's big variance when it comes to how people interpret chatbots and what they find to be appropriate and not. And that's something that of course has to be managed find out how we can sort of best tailor that to the various types of preferences. So there's a lot of interesting challenges to tackle here.
So I think this points us to the fact that human chatbot relationship is in its early stages.
Yes.
Compared to human relationship that have evolved for a much longer time.
Yes.
But it's really cool. JP, you had a question here as well. The relational dynamics.
Yeah, it's I put it in the chat, but I'm quite interested in Marita, if you can maybe point us to kind of the broader sphere of is it kind of psychological research, psychological educational, but what frameworks have you found that can frame your research? Is it like social materialistic tendencies? Are we talking post digital? I don't know. I'm not a expert, but I'm certainly interested because so many sparks that you let loose here among us. Would be nice just to get a glimpse of where to look, more or less,
Yes.
in the theory.
Yes. So my background is in psychology, so I'm basing my understanding on psychological theories for the most part, and like when I use framework, it's to sort of understand relationship development. And since there is really no framework made to understand relationship development between humans and artificial entities, I have used frameworks developed to understand relationship development between humans, which I know some find to not be appropriate. That's a huge discussion just there. But what I have used with the success so far is the social penetration theory. So that basically states that when you become friends or develop a close relationship with someone, it's a stage-wise process where first you start off with small talk to sort of get the sense of who that other person is. And then when trust develops and you see that that person is nice, you start to reveal more personal things about yourself, and you sort of move up the ladder of self-disclosure. And the ultimate goal is basically to self-disclose and share very personal things with that person. And when you do so, the closeness seems to form and there seems to be some type of attachment. And then once the relationship progresses, you don't participate in intimate conversations all the time, but you have like that sense of security to be able to do so. And that's very relevant for a chatbot context, because if there's one thing they're good at, it is to sort of make people open up and self-disclose, because people tend to find it more safer talking to chatbot due to the anonymity related to that. So that's a framework I've been using with social chatbots, and whether or not it's relevant in education context is something that I'm not 100% sure of course, because the purpose here is not to make them share their feelings and the deepest secrets all the time, so to speak. But it's a framework that seems to work to understand human chatbot relationships to a certain extent, at least.
Thank you very much for elaborating on that. I think we need to wrap up a little bit here. So before we end the kind of synchronous conversation here today, I would just like to point you to the continuation of this. So as I mentioned, Miles will be with us next week, and I'll give you 30 seconds to give a teaser on that in a minute. Then what you just discussed about ethical considerations of the use of chatbots in education will be one of the topics for one of the sessions where we spend more time on that. That will be facilitated by Dr. Wayne Holmes, that is one of the UNESCO consultants on AI in education. And also I would like to bridge over to the community on Differ, where we have the chance to continue the conversation. If in case that's an asynchronous community, so to speak. I would like to kind of respect everyone's schedule here for today. It's 4 o'clock here in Oslo, and I'm sure people have more things on the agenda. But I'm really, really happy to see everyone here. I hope that this gave you a taster. And I think this concept about following the student journey and see how the longevity of chatbots can be extended, that offers a contrasting approach compared to the more task-based chatbots that we see regularly in the marketplace, so to speak. So thank you for that, and we will give everyone a short link to a small survey. That's part of the research of the Edubots project as well, where we aim to learn as much as possible from educators and practitioners. So that will follow. Miles, would you like to give us a teaser?
Yeah, I can give you a quick teaser. So I think next week, I'm going to, I've titled it Design, Develop, Deploy, and it's just talking through the practical processes of launching a chatbot at the University of Edinburgh for admissions queries. And it's different to the conversation today. It's more the practical steps of going through non-technical practical steps, I'll say, the things that we encountered in the various teams for managing that deployment.
Fantastic. That's a wrap. See you next week.